Hello everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Open Heritage Statement. We're so glad that you could join us today. My name is Brigitte Vizina, and I'm the Director of Policy and Open Culture at Creative Commons. Just before we begin, a quick bit of housekeeping, three things. First, this session is being recorded, and the recording and the transcript will be posted on Creative Commons YouTube channel. The second point is that today's event is held in English and in English only, but we recognize that this is not a language that everybody feels fully comfortable in. So the Open Heritage Statement itself and related materials are being translated. On the website, you'll see we already have the Turkish, the Spanish, and the Greek versions. And we're working on additional language versions, starting with French, German, and Finnish. And we'll continue to make more translations available so that this work can be shared more broadly across language borders and can better reflect our linguistic diversity. And the third quick bit is that you're welcome to use the chat and the Q&A for comments and questions throughout the sessions. We'll really do our best to answer everything live in the chat or in our interventions. But if we don't get to your questions, we'll do our best also to follow up on any outstanding questions in our communications after the event. So today I'm speaking on behalf of the Secretariat of the TAROCH Coalition, and TAROCH stands for Towards a Recommendation on Open Cultural Heritage. This coalition was formed about a year ago in November of 2024 by Creative Commons. And today we have more than 65 organizations spread across 25 countries. And our goal in this coalition is to support the development of an international standard-setting instrument under the aegis of UNESCO that would promote equitable access in the digital environment to heritage that is in the public domain, so heritage that is out of copyright. And this initiative really reflects Creative Commons' ongoing commitment to making knowledge more accessible. We do that through open education, open culture, open science, etc. And one of the key ways that we've been able to advance this mission over the past year has been by convening the TAROCH Coalition. And I'm really happy that many TAROCH members from different parts of the world are here with us today, and soon we'll be able to hear from some of the members' diverse experiences firsthand. But before we do that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Sarah Pearson, who is CC's General Counsel, who will share why this work is so central to Creative Commons' mission and strategy.
Thank you, Brigitte. And on behalf of Creative Commons, welcome everyone to the Open Heritage Statement launch. What we're celebrating today is the culmination of TAROCH's remarkable advocacy and movement building over the past year. It builds on years of community work that Creative Commons has supported, including in the development of UNESCO's 2019 recommendation on open educational resources and the 2021 recommendation on open science. Both rely on CC licenses and public domain tools to make knowledge open. Creative Commons is also proud to be an official NGO partner to UNESCO in consultative status, a reflection of our shared belief that openness can benefit everyone, everywhere. We know that the world that we want to see is possible, where education, culture, and science are equitably shared. Creative Commons provides critical infrastructure for open sharing, but it's the values behind our work that matter more than the legal and technical details. The Open Heritage Statement is rooted in those values, eloquently describing why access to heritage matters, and then laying out a set of practices and principles that put those values into practice. As we navigate what it means to protect and sustain a thriving Creative Commons, especially in an age of AI, many questions remain. But one thing is clear: cultural heritage belongs to all of us. And to make that shared cultural wealth truly accessible to all, we must prioritize sustainable models, investment, and collective stewardship. The Open Heritage Statement provides us with a compass in this effort, one shared across countries and communities. So today we celebrate a major milestone. Back over to you, Brigitte.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. So, as you've just heard, this effort really connects with CC's broader mission in the open ecosystem. We work not only in open heritage, but also in open education, for example. And our work there has shown that international guidance and shared open standards at the international level can really expand access to education, lower the cost of education. And the same with open science, we've seen that these recognitions at the international level can help really improve collaboration in research and can help accelerate scientific discovery. So what we're doing with open heritage is that we're transposing this open philosophy to help achieve heritage related goals. So to help protect, to help preserve and improve access to the world's cultural memory. So what we're doing is we're trying to apply open solutions to heritage. What does that look like? So to give you an idea, I'd like to share a very short story. And it starts about 3 years ago, where the Natural History Museum in the UK reported that scientists had applied computer vision to over 125,000 digitized images of butterfly specimens from the museum's collection, some of them dating back hundreds of years. And scientists were able to study those images, and they found that insects are changing due to climate change. So in hotter years, you'll get bigger insects. And that was quite surprising, but I think what the museum explained and what was interesting to us is that open access digitized collections allow scientists from all over the globe to be able to more easily use collections and accelerate research in a more collaborative way than ever before. Those were the words on the museum blog. And for those of us who are promoting equitable access to heritage in the digital environment, this story is incredibly exciting because a museum's heritage that is digitized and that's made openly accessible by using the Creative Commons public domain dedication tool, so CC0, can actually help us understand the effects of climate change, which is one of the greatest challenges of our times. So it's pretty extraordinary what it can achieve. And so the reason that I'm sharing this butterfly story is actually to illustrate three key points. The first one is that access to heritage is so important in the digital environment, and it can have far-reaching positive impact sometimes in the most unexpected ways, like in the butterfly story. So what do we mean by heritage? That around the world, there's archives, libraries, and museums, these institutions that hold extraordinary artifacts, objects, sometimes natural elements and documents, and many are long out of copyright or were never in copyright, and so are part of the public domain. And that makes up our collective heritage. And being able to access this heritage in the digital environment is absolutely critical to so many facets of our lives, even, as I said, where we least expect it. So in science, for example, it can lead to new scientific discoveries, as in the butterfly story. It can really encourage the production of new ideas, fresh solutions, and help us address the world's biggest problems. It's also a way to help improve access to education. For example, think of heritage that is included in open educational resources and teaching materials. It helps foster more participatory learning approaches. This is something that UNESCO highlights in its framework for culture and arts education, the value of open licensing. It can also inspire artists and creators today to interrogate our past. It can spark their imagination, and it can really help them express their own creativity in our contemporary culture. It's also a way for all of us. So we're not all scientists, artists, or educators, but we all have the right to participate in cultural life. This is our fundamental right. So we need to be able to shape how we want our shared heritage to look like. We need to have this space to create these new meanings around our heritage and add our voices to the cultural discourse. And all of this can ultimately really help us make sense of the world and inspire us to build a better world. especially as nowadays we're confronted with so many entangled challenges. Having access to our heritage can get us all a little bit closer to achieving sustainable development, especially if we recognize that culture is a sustainable development goal in its own right. So, in a nutshell, that's why our memories, our history, our heritage need to be accessible to us. And as UNESCO states, heritage is a shared resource and culture is a global public good. And so, to be a public good, the public must be able to benefit from it. And so, it has to be able to access it. And today, with so many of our cultural experiences taking place online, knowledge and culture really move across borders. And so we need to preserve this connection with our heritage, especially in the digital environment. So that brings me to the second point, which is that even though access is very important, it's under threat in the digital environment. Access to our shared heritage is in peril. It's actually often compromised by unnecessary barriers. Even though it's already in the public domain, there are still some legal barriers, some technical barriers, some socioeconomic barriers that are rapidly closing access. And we'll hear more about these in a moment, but for example, incorrect copyright claims over digital reproductions of public domain heritage, or technological locks, or prohibitive access fees, and a lot more. So in other words, there's like a lot of obstacles that still stand in the way of equitable access to heritage in the digital environment. And the result is that these critical pieces of our shared memory, they remain out of reach, and they stay out of sight and then out of mind. And this is really problematic because if nothing gets done to remove these barriers, we will weaken the foundations of future generations' participation in cultural life. Future generations will not be able to interrogate the past and will not be able to participate in the life of the community. And it will also threaten the digital inclusion and the digital equity that in knowledge access that we need if we want to solve the world's most pressing problems, if we want to reach the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and if we want to build connected, resilient, and sustainable society. So this threat is real, okay? And unless we act now, that means that vast parts of humanity's cultural record are going to be removed from the commons at the very moment that we most need them. So we need to now protect access to heritage in the digital environment before it gets locked away forever. So this is bringing me to my third point, which is that something can be done against it. And actually something is being done, luckily, and it's called open heritage. So when I say open heritage, I mean heritage and the associated metadata that is made broadly accessible as possible for sharing and reuse. And by reuse, we include commercial use and any types of modification by anyone for any purpose at no cost to the user and free from unfair, unnecessary restrictions, especially copyright restrictions. So open heritage is not just about, putting a digital file online and making it available, but it's making sure that anyone, anywhere can enjoy, study, and remix that heritage, no matter where they live or what resources they have, so they can access it from anywhere at no cost. And this is what we mean by digital equity. But it's also about cultural equity. And it's important to recognize that there are other governance frameworks outside of copyright that may condition access on the legitimate grounds. And so that means that sometimes there might be some justified reasons not to openly share heritage. So this is what equitable access is all about. It's taking into account all of these nuances. Now, the term open heritage, it may sound new, but the practice dates back to more than 20 years. with trailblazing institutions. We often cite the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Smithsonian Institution in the US, the Statensmuseum for Kunst in Denmark, the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands, more recently Paris Musée in France, or here you see the National Libraries of Finland, of Aruba and Qatar, who the three of them are members of the TAROCH Coalition, and many other pioneering institutions that decided to share the heritage in their collections broadly, freely, and openly without undue barriers by harnessing Creative Commons licenses and public domain tools. And we'll hear from their experiences later in the event. And if you're interested in success stories of how open heritage has really unlocked new possibilities, you can discover some on our website under story frames. We already have a few examples of how open heritage has really brought success in unexpected places. Unfortunately, open heritage is still the exception rather than the rule. So even though the benefits of public engagement with heritage is clear, the reality is that open heritage is still quite rare because for most institutions, the fact of providing open, equitable access still remains a challenge. And according to some estimates based on the Open LAM survey, only about 1% of institutions around the world share heritage openly. That's just 1% of all museums, libraries, and archives. Why is that? Well, the thing is, the institutions themselves are facing their own barriers to opening up. They're finding it difficult to open up, and these barriers take root in all sorts of issues around people, around money, and around policy. So let's talk about policy, because indeed, there's this huge policy disconnect. There's no international framework that's providing clear and comprehensive guidelines on how to develop open heritage policies, implement open heritage practices, or even how to apply these open heritage tools. So many institutions are left a little bit unsure, like what is possible, where to begin, and many are unaware that they're actually missing out on the opportunities of open heritage because the policy framework is either non-existent or very unclear. And if we don't have this global policy alignment, well, the full potential of open heritage remains largely unrealized. So to put it really simply, it's the absence of an international policy framework that encourages open policies, open tools, open practices that puts our shared heritage at risk of being locked away forever. And this is precisely the gap that the Open Heritage Statement aims to close. So it aims to empower these cultural heritage institutions with shared understanding, a shared open standard, and clear opportunities for international cooperation. So this really brings me to the purpose of our event today, which is the official launch of the Open Heritage Statement. So the statement that we're launching today is a huge milestone for the coalition. It's really a reflection of tremendous collaborative effort that is bringing us really one step much closer to establishing an international framework for equitable access to heritage in the digital world. So personally, I've been blown away by the engagement of our coalition members. They really came together and they really showed a strong commitment to activate change. So this is really dedicated to all the members of the coalition, but also our open community, because you are the inspiration for the Open Heritage Statement. The Open Heritage Statement goes back even to times before the coalition. So it's bringing together years of dialogue, years of collaboration, and it's putting them together in a unified vision for equitable access to heritage in the public domain. And it, like I said, it really reflects collective experiences and experimentation and collaboration that's all based on our shared values and principles, which are highlighted in the statement. The statement also shows the barriers that still hold back equitable access, and that we know that people are still bumping up against on a daily basis in all corners of the world. And finally, it's a global call to action to apply these policy solutions to overcome these barriers. And as we'll see, many countries and many institutions are already implementing them to positive effect. But with this statement now, we have this collective voice that we can promote on this global stage. And we're able to demonstrate quite concisely and succinctly in about 4 pages the challenges that still prevent you, that prevent me, that prevent everybody else from enjoying our heritage fully. So with this statement, we have an instrument. We have a tool so that we can raise awareness about the many ways that we can overcome these challenges, and we can point to evidence of the difference that open heritage can make. So with this open heritage statement, we share this urgent message, which is that our heritage is slowly being locked away from us. And if we don't act now to protect this access, we will lose a part of our shared humanity. So now, the moment that you've been waiting for, I'll hand over to Teresa Nobre, who is the co-chair of the statement workspace of the TAROCH Coalition. And Teresa will tell us a bit more about how the statement was created and what it contains. So give us a bit of the context in which it was drafted and the big issues that it aims to address. Over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Bridget. Before we deep dive into the statement, I want to say, as already mentioned by Bridget, this is really the result of a collaborative and iterative process involving a group of drafters, 12 people from 9 countries, and the wider TAROCH Coalition membership. So our work also started very early in November 2024 with a pre-drafting consultation designed to identify the key issues that the statement should address. This early phase allows us to surface shared priorities and determine which topics had broad agreement across the coalition. Based on this input, we selected a set of core issues and began our research and discussions. A few months later, we met in person and drafted the first draft of the statement, which in this in-person discussion, we were able to engage in deep dialogue and collective reflection. But again, the issues chosen, as Bridget mentioned, had already been discussed and commonly agreed for many years. So it was not so difficult to reach that consensus. It was more a question of on how to draft in the best way possible. So after drafting the first draft, we had 2 post-draft consultation phases in which the TAROCH Coalition members were invited to provide feedback, helping refine the text. So the final draft was completed in September 2024-5, and throughout the process, we really prioritized transparency, consensus building, and definitely recognizing that the strength of the statement lies in its shared authorship and collective vision. So let's look at the statement now. The statement identifies 17 undue and unfair barriers to equitable access, and you can, of course, use this QR code to access the statement. It's also available in the website already mentioned by Bridget. So each barrier is paired with a policy solution that is either addressed at policymakers or a recommendation that is addressed to heritage institutions. And let's look at the structure. You have the barriers described in the preamble, which is the first part of the statement, which also articulates values and principles. And then you can find the policy solutions addressed at policymakers or the recommendations addressed at heritage institutions in the article, so the second part of the statement. Of course, we do not have time to go through each of these pairs of barrier solutions in detail, but I want to give you at least an overview of the different categories that are addressed in the statement. And the first category is, of course, legal barriers. The design of laws, but also how they are interpreted and applied, can either block or facilitate access to digital heritage in the public domain. So we know that legislators, policymakers have the legislative power to determine what is protected for how long and under what conditions. And in most parts of the world, copyright is the legal framework that will govern these conditions. And copyright is predicated on the idea that once a work's term of protection expires, it enters the public domain and becomes free for all to access and use. However, we have seen that in some countries, lawmakers have introduced new layers of rights over heritage that have been in the public domain for centuries. So these laws end up extending protection far beyond its copyright term, creating what we call a never-ending exclusivity that risks turning public domain treasures into de facto proprietary assets, limiting freedom of expression and stalling cultural renewal. But of course, access to public domain heritage is not only shaped at the legislative level. We know that cultural heritage institutions, commercial actors, and individuals play an essential role in how these laws are interpreted and enforced in practice. And these practices can contribute to either expand or restrict the public domain and the freedoms associated with it. So, for instance, when heritage institutions wrongly interpret the law, claim copyright over digitizations of public domain heritage, or apply copyright licenses, even if they are open licenses, to these materials, this confuses the public, creates unnecessary barriers to access, and discourages reuse. On the other hand, when these actors use the policy space that is available to them to help protect the public domain, they can contribute to remove these important barriers to access. So Europeana provides a good example of how this power can be used for good when they recommend institutions, for instance, to provide the public with direct mechanisms to challenge inaccurate rights claims over public domain heritage. So different challenges, some coming from the law itself, some coming from how the law is interpreted and implemented. And our recommendations in this section, therefore, address both lawmakers and institutions. For lawmakers, we ask, do not grant new copyright or related rights over non-original reproductions, digitizations of public domain heritage. Do not introduce other legal restrictions to these materials, namely through heritage protection laws. And to institutions, we say, do not wrongly claim copyright and apply copyright licenses, even if they are open licenses, and definitely introduce the legal means to the public to be able to contest these incorrect copyright claims over public domain heritage. Moving to the second category of challenges, we have what we call contractual and technological challenges. And we know that, again, contracts and technologies can either restrict or enable access to digital heritage. Contracts, website terms of use, or other arrangements can definitely be used and are being used to impose unnecessary restrictions on the use of public domain heritage. I'm sure many of you came across already to clauses that say this image of a public domain heritage can only be used for non-commercial purposes, etc. Technologies like digital logs can also make collections hard to reuse and to find. But again, these same tools can also be used to support access, and this has been showed very well by the standardized machine-readable public domain labels, such as the one provided by Creative Commons, that when used properly can signal that content is free to use and reuse. Definitely, if digitized heritage in the public domain is not identified as such as being in the public domain, people will likely not know that they can freely use it. So clear tools make public domain heritage discoverable and set out reuse possibilities. Also, these tools, together with other measures, can improve the public ability to reference institutions, creators, communities of origin. Definitely proper acknowledgement is important, as it ensures that heritage is not only legally open, but also transparently connected to its sources, supporting authenticity and building bridges across the global community. On the other hand, we also have other type of features, design features that we call accessibility features, like alt text, captions, and flexible formats. This ensures that public domain heritage reaches all users, including those with disabilities. So without these essentials, digital collections that are in the public domain remain inaccessible to people with disabilities or narrow, diverse needs. So we believe that true access means heritage is unusable without ignorance by everyone. Therefore, in this section of barriers, we recommend mainly institutions to, one, not use contracts to lock up heritage that should be free, two, provide access to public domain heritage free from technical restrictions, three, clearly label public domain content through standardized and machine-readable tools, four, adopt measures that support acknowledgement of source, and five, provide accessible formats for persons with disabilities. And with that, we move to the last category of challenges. And these are structural, but also ethical challenges to the process of digitizing and making available public domain heritage. We know that digitization is not a neutral act. It's a skill-dependent process shaped by cultural values, ethical choices, and legal constraints, as we saw. So a lack of training and confidence among heritage professionals can definitely limit their ability to make informed decisions about what to digitize, how to share it, how to manage access and open access to heritage. So definitely a barrier that needs to be addressed. Also, many institutions face economic barriers to digitize public domain heritage. So to recover digitization costs, they may impose restrictive license or enter into exclusive commercial deals, and this can lead to the public being charged twice for accessing heritage that already collectively owns as public. Furthermore, we have infrastructural challenges. Institutions often rely on fragile, proprietary, underfunded systems, lacking open standards and consistent metadata. This results in poor preservation, limited access, and risk of digital obsolescence. Finally, the ethical challenges in relation to digitization of indigenous or culturally sensitive heritage. The legal frameworks that we have been talking about, like copyright, often fail to reflect collective cultural significance. So what is legally public might still be subject to customary laws, cultural protocols, or community consent, and sharing such heritage without free, prior, and informed consents can perpetuate colonial harm, misrepresentation, or cultural appropriation. So in this section, we definitely have recommendations both for policymakers and institutions. So we need investment in capacity building, we need to support partnerships, we need to develop sustaining funding models that allow institutions to recover reasonable digitization costs. We need to develop and maintain open and sustainable digital public infrastructures, and we need to respect and engage with communities of origin. So definitely a lot to unpack. I invite you to read the statement carefully, as well as the story frames that we have available at the website to better understand not only the barriers, but also the solutions that we propose, and also, as Bridget mentioned, to find real-world examples of best practices adopted by heritage institutions. Thank you. Over to you, Bridget.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Teresa. So now I'd like to welcome a few members of the TAROCH Coalition to share their experiences. And we'll first hear from Al-Walid Al-Khaja, who would like to talk about why equitable access to heritage, what it matters, why it matters in your community. Over to you, Al-Walid.
Thank you, Brigitte. So Qatar National Library is proud to be a member of the TAROCH Coalition and an official signatory of the Open Heritage Statement. Our mission at QNL is to collect, preserve, and provide access to the country's and region's recorded history. However, one of the key challenges facing our region is the geographical dispersion of documentary heritage related to Qatar and the Gulf and the region itself. So to address this, we actively form digitization partnerships with institutions that hold relevant materials to our culture, to our region. As QNL, Qatar National Library, we do not assert copyright over public domain works, and we encourage our partners to adopt the same approach. Unfortunately, many institutions around the world continue to claim copyright over digitized materials, even when the original physical items are no longer protected by copyright. We believe that the Open Heritage Statement offers a path toward a shared understanding and common language between institutions for handling public domain heritage. And this adoption, we believe, will lead to greater visibility for institutions and their collections online, enhanced digital preservation through open access, more opportunities for reuse of heritage materials in different domains and fields, and promotion of social justice through equitable access. And we strongly encourage institutions to read the statement and sign the statement itself, the Open Heritage Statement, and join us in opening access to culture and heritage. And now I'm going to hand this over to Patricia Diaz-Rubio.
Hi, thank you, Alawid. And thank you so much for the invitation. I would like to speak a little bit how this eventual framework will impact our community, especially in South American region. A global instrument ensuring equitable access to cultural heritage in the public domain could represent a turning point for future generations in South America. For us, it would mean rebalancing an historical asymmetry. For too long, much of the visual, artistic, and documentary memory of our people have been preserved and often controlled outside our region. An international recommendation like TAROCH, like the Open Heritage Statement, will help us to bring that knowledge back into the hands of local communities, where it can be freely accessed, studied, and reused to create new meaning. It would also empower a new generation of cultural workers, educators, researchers, and Wikimedians like our community across Latin America who've already believed that open access is essential for inclusion and for innovation. Having a clear shared framework at the global level would make their work, our work, easier, safer, and more legitimate in the eyes of the institutions and local governments. Beyond access itself, such an instrument would encourage collaboration between cultural institutions, civil society, and open knowledge movements. It could inspire national policies and digital infrastructures that strengthen our collective capacity to care for, share, and connect with our cultural commons. In short, it's about giving the next generations the ability to see, study, and reuse our heritage as something that belongs to us, not hidden behind barriers or license, but open to everyone and everywhere. And now I will hand it to Harriet. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Patricia. And I'll be speaking more on how the call connects to our work here in Ghana. So the global call is for an equitable access to public domain heritage in the digital environment. And we as Global Open Initiative, the work that we've done that reflects this call is to try and document our culture, such as the kente weaving, the bead making, on open platforms, especially on Wikipedia, on Wikicommons, on Wikidata, and we release them all under an open license where individuals can make use of them and learn from them. What we've done is to work with partners like the GLAM institutions, with local individuals who are knowledgeable in the field that we want to document, and put on these platforms. And by engaging these partners, we are able to provide some form of capacity building on open knowledge, on Creative Commons licenses, on copyright restrictions, and then also in making use of some of these available resources. And we also understand that the work that we've been able to do has been solely through the support of our partners and also the Wikimedia Foundation, which is very key to sustain our work because they provide us with the training, they provide us with the tools, they provide us with the financial resources to afford some of the platforms and all. So the barriers, as we earlier on heard from Bridget, they still persist. And so what this call does for us is that it helps us to have a collective effort towards ensuring that there's equitable access to public domain. It wouldn't have to be just a few people, but then we have institutions, we have individuals, we have governmental organizations actively working to ensure that we have this equitable access. Thank you very much. And I would like to hand over to Deborah DeAngelis.
Thank you, Harriet, and it's a pleasure to be here for the launch of the Open Heritage Statement, and thanks for the invitation. Signing the Open Heritage Statement has at the Creative Commons Italy chapter that here represented it is not just a formal act, is a commitment to transparency, accessibility, and the idea that cultural heritage is a living resource meant to be experienced, studied, and reimagined by all. When we open cultural heritage in the public domain, we open possibilities. We democratize knowledge, empower research and education, offering materials that can inspire new insights, methodologies, and discoveries, but also fuel creativity and innovation, allowing new artists, designers, and developers to build on our collective past. And also reinforce community identity, connecting people more deeply to their history and also cultural narratives. These are universal opportunities, the same across all the regions that embrace openness. But I believe that for Italy, my country, open cultural heritage in the public domain carries even deeper potential. First, it can bring a greater clarity to our legal framework. Transparency and awareness reduce the fear of making mistakes, a fear that often prevents Italian cultural heritage institutions from sharing their collections. Second, it can help us shift the mindset from one of custodianship, where heritage is often protected behind walls, to one of stewardship, where it is actively shared, interpreted, and made relevant for today's audiences. Third, openness invites also an ethical approach, as has been said before. It reminds us to recognize the role of cultural heritage institutions. And finally, it allows us to maximize digital opportunities, aligning our institution with current technological advancement, and also ensuring that cultural heritage remain vibrant and visible in the digital space. So by embracing openness, we don't diminish value, we multiply it, and we make heritage a bridge between the past and future. Thank you, and now I'll pass the floor to Hardy.
Thank you, Deborah. Hello, everyone. I've observed that the data transparency is still poorly implemented in my country, in Indonesia, especially when it comes to cultural information. Even the government says that they have a very rich diversity of cultural heritage. And this gap is deeply concerning when viewed through the lens of the DIKW framework, where data serve as the foundation for generating information, knowledge, and ultimately wisdom. Without transparent cultural data, how can we expect cultural knowledge to be preserved, understood, or shared in a meaningful way? Cultural knowledge is not static. It evolves through access, interpretation, and the dialogue. When data about tradition, language, rituals, and histories is hidden or inaccessible, we risk losing not only the richness of our heritage, but also the opportunity for intercultural understanding. Transparency in cultural data is essential for communities to reclaim, to reinterpret, and celebrate their identities. Access to cultural information is a fundamental right, and it empowers individuals to connect with their roots, foster respect across communities, and enables collaborative learning. In a world increasingly shaped by digital exchange, the ability to see and experience diverse cultures is more than a privilege. It's a pathway to empathy. I believe that when people are given the tools to understand each other's stories, values, and expressions, they begin to see the humanity that binds us all. This shared wisdom born from transparent cultural knowledge. My team and I at Wikimedia Indonesia are committed to expanding access to cultural heritage through a carefully planned initiative we've developed. Even if it begins with a small collaborations, we believe every step counts towards more inclusive and transparent cultural future. I encourage all cultural institutions to adopt an open approach and support this movement by signing the statement. And now over to Tanya Richard.
Thank you, Hardy. I'm so happy to be here at the launch of TAROCH. What I wanted to talk about, I've worked in museums and galleries for over 30 years, and I'd like to talk about access. The ability to connect with public collections has been my primary distraction over this whole time. One of my first museum jobs was as a framer in a small, beautiful commercial gallery in New Brunswick. One day, a local man came into the gallery, and I knew him, everyone did. He was someone the town collectively cared for. He would sweep shop doorways and perform other odd jobs. On this particular day, I came out from behind the back and said hello and invited him in as he timidly looked around. The owner soon came walking into the shop, and she smiled brightly and said hi, but it had the effect of sending him out of the door. The owner was pleased. That's as far inside as he's ever been. Where I have expected a business owner's sort of protectionist reaction, I understood that this gallery was her gift to her community. It wasn't just a business. In fact, she had been hoping to get this person, to get all the people in the town to visit and connect with the local artists that she represented. I continued with my studies in museology, and I never forgot how important these spaces are to communities. Even the Medicis eventually came around in the 1700s. As I traveled along my career path, I learned about Canadian copyright law and how museums grapple with the rights management while promoting access to cultural collections. I became intimately familiar with this nebulous space in between. And when I had questions, it was rarely the act that gave me the answers. It was my growing network of copyright colleagues, the artists and the creators with whom I developed relationships, and with the users who would enthusiastically share their projects with me. With them, I discussed institutional purpose and risk management. We pondered how to protect works in certain situations and how to enthusiastically share them in others. I was invited to project launchers to see the new children's book, which was inspired by the works and life of Emily Carr, to see a contemporary Indigenous singer who had incorporated traditional songs from our archives from their home community, a student who built interactive maps for locating cultural collections across the country, plus so many more wonderful projects that exist today in this universe, built on that collective heritage. I know we all love policies and processes, but I've come to learn that this sharing and collaboration is central to the work of cultural organizations. Without these connections, these sparks, we wouldn't know how to cater to our public. We wouldn't be asking our artists the important questions. This sometimes messy and boisterous and chaotic work can be challenging, but it's always worth it. It's been my education, and it continues to be one of the most valuable things about my work. And now over to you, Brigitte.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you to all of you for sharing your personal experiences. I'd like now to open the floor for any questions from our audience. If you do have a question, please raise your hand and we'll be able to unmute you so you can ask your question live. You can also ask your question in the chat or in the Q&A section. And like I said, if we don't have time to get to all the questions, we'll try to follow up in writing. So are there any questions, burning questions at this very moment? I hear that someone has a question. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
I am audible enough. Okay. Thank you. Beautiful teachers. And I would love to thank you very much for the very first opportunity that the community has been given this platform for Heritage Open Statement. To me, I'm very courageous to hear from you and opening up this kind of conversation. And as an indigenous monarch king, we are having a very exhausting trouble. I'm from South Africa, and then I find out that most of the political organization government, they do not actually have the right knowledge of our culture. How do we get an access when we do a heritage cultural event, got an access that we could get a free access to the very place that it has been our ancestors' place? Because education only on the digital or on the packages of in the libraries is not enough. To us, the land and the soil, it is the kin to us. It's not a property like it has been protected and having the barriers that you cannot just enter, or even when you apply it, forbidden. How we can this platform help us to navigate in that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very important question. And thank you so much for providing the context. And this is something that we try to address in the statement itself. We try to recognize that there can be some justified limitations to open access precisely in the situations that you evoke. And I would like to point you to Articles 16 and 17 of the statement, which are attempts to address the issue that you evoke. And I would also like to invite you to look at the story frames that we share on the openheritagestatement.org website. There is one where we illustrate that open access and indigenous data sovereignty can work hand in hand, and that there might be some tensions that are possibly that we can possibly resolve through conversations and relationship building. So I invite you to look for that information on the openheritagestatement.org website. And now I would like to hear if we have one other question.
Hi, yes, I'm Clara from Wikimedia Switzerland. We have joined TAROCH quite recently, but I know that there is a lot of other Wikimedia chapters and also user groups and related groups that have joined the coalition. And so I was wondering, I hope this is the right place to ask if there is maybe a joint effort of the, Wikimedia related groups to kind of update each other on efforts related to the TAROCH initiative, because I think it might kind of, improve what we could learn from each other. So I think Patricia is from Wikimedia Chile, right, who spoke before. So I would be happy to hear a little bit about that, if there's already something in place, or if not, I would be happy to collaborate with someone to put something in place. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clara. I think that your question will be addressed in the final remarks that Dee will be sharing. So I'll let Dee answer this. But yes, we strongly encourage collaboration across the open movement. And so thank you very much for your offer to participate in that respect. I think that's all the time that we have for questions. If you do want to follow up with us, we'll share our contact information at the end of this webinar. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. But as we've come to the end of the time that is allocated to us, I think we need to move to concluding remarks. And I just want to say thank you to all the speakers, to the contributors, to you, the participants, for your active engagement in the chat. It's been busy throughout, for your thoughtful questions. Thank you to all the members of the TAROCH Coalition and also the Creative Commons colleagues. They've been really active behind the scenes to make this a reality before, but also during the event. Thank you so much. And again, I think gratitude is due to all the pioneers who've preceded us and, you know, first had the dream of open heritage and made it a reality for all of us to benefit. So this statement is really an homage to the trailblazers, those that championed open heritage at a time where the term open heritage, you know, hadn't even been coined yet, but at the time where their vision, it went through some experimental stage and it got us to where we are today. And so just look at how far we've come. Those adventurous first steps are now enshrined in the statement for others to walk into. So this is a really momentous occasion. This launch is a very special milestone. That said, it's only the beginning. So the journey continues because, like I mentioned, this statement is really, it's an instrument for change. And we really believe that it can have an influential role in prompting change at the institutional level within institutions, that it can help activate reforms at the national level and national laws, and it can really also help shape the standard setting instruments at the international level, which is the goal of the coalition. So there at the international level, given its leading role in cultural policies, UNESCO appears to be uniquely positioned to set these open standards. And in fact, UNESCO has demonstrated already a very strong commitment to openness. They adopted the 2019 recommendation on open educational resources, and in 2021, the recommendation on open science. And we know there's evidence that these recommendations were really game changers in their fields. And so a recommendation on open heritage would be the next logical step. And it could really catalyze this new cooperation on something that is actually a key priority for UNESCO, which is to protect the universal right to participate in cultural life and to ensure that there is equitable access to heritage. Like I said, to tell us more about how the coalition is actually carrying this vision forward through advocacy and community engagement, I'm handing over to my colleague, Dee Harris.
Thank you, Brigitte. You know, as you said, the Open Heritage Statement isn't the endpoint. And within the coalition, our advocacy workspace really has developed a strategy to bring the statement to life through local conversations grounded in your real world experiences. So I'd like to first of all, take a moment to thank everyone in that workspace for their energy, creativity, and commitment to this work. So some of these experiences have been captured in the story frames, which are really just narratives that illustrate the points of the statement. And you can obviously check those out on the website. And we're also, we've launched what are called advocacy circles. They're small groups of coalition members and other supporters who are championing this work in their own countries, which takes the point. It can be regionally organized, it can be Wikimedia organized. So if you're interested in getting involved in that work, please let us know. There's more information on how you can get a hold of us here. And now this is where you come in. The Open Heritage Statement is officially open for signature by governments, institutions, and organizations. We already have endorsed 32 signatories. And while the statement itself is not open to individual signatures, individuals are still vitally important to the success. You can support the movement by sharing the statement, promoting it with your networks, join a circle, encourage institutions, governments, and organizations to show their support, because every action helps strengthen this global call. And now back to you, Bridget.
All right. Well, this is really the end. Thank you so much, Dee. Thank you to everyone who joined us today for this launch. I hope we can all stay in touch and that together we can make access to heritage more equitable. So have a great rest of your day and bye-bye.